Greetings all, and welcome to Lucas Sprues. In today's video, we're going to do an inbox review on Italeri's recently reissued P-51A Mustang. So this is one of the very few 1/72nd scale Mustangs with the Allison engine that are out there. And this kit was originally from 1997, I believe, but has been recently issued again in the last year. So we're going to have a little look at the box, then we'll have a look at the sprues and the instructions, and I'll talk a little bit about whether or not I think this is a good kit. So without further ado, let's get into it. So, starting out by having a look at the box, which I have to confess did make me definitely want to try this kit because it looks absolutely awesome. You've got the two of the A model P-51s flying low over a Japanese airbase, dropping bombs, guns blazing, all these explosions, and the planes themselves look absolutely hammered. So yeah, I loved the box art on this kit. Pretty similar to most other Italeri kits with the titles there and a few little details. So you've got a super decal sheet, which is their talk for a lot of decals. And there's 6 different markings included, 4 American and 2 British. Figure not included, sadly, but one model is. And then you've got the Boeing officially licensed product sticker, which is pretty common to P-51 kits. A little bit of a brief description about the P-51A, talking a bit about how it used the Allison engine, which was pretty decent for the time, but obviously once they put the Merlin in, the Mustang was a little bit more nippy and also a little bit harder to fly. But yeah, so the initial A model Mustangs talks a little bit about them. Interestingly, it only sort of talks about their history with the US Air Force, but these were, I believe, originally for the Royal Air Force when they requested North American build the P-40, and they said instead that they would, rather than retool and make the P-40, they would just design a new plane, and apparently they did it quicker than it probably would have taken anyways to make P-40s. So yeah, the A model is kind of the start of the Mustang story, so pretty cool. On the top here, we've got Lynn, so the marking featured on the box art in colour with a fair bit of weathering shown on this sort of marking guide or drawing of it. And then we've got a little picture here of all of the decals included. Again, a little bit about Boeing license, and then on the sides here we have the repeat of the box art. Price tag here, so I paid around about $28.95 for this kit, which we'll talk about at the end, the pricing. And then on the back here, we have all of the markings that are included, and as you can see, there's quite a lot, and there's a fair bit of variety with these ones. So we have the one featured on the cover, which is a P-51A Lin from China in 1944, so pretty late in the war, really. Then we've got one from the US Army Air Force, Miss Virginia, and it's part of the Far East. So again, 1944, so pretty late in the war for a early model Mustang. Here we have our first, I believe, Royal Air Force marking, although interestingly, it's got a mix. It's got the standard Royal Air Force camouflage scheme from 1942 with the flat earth and the dark green. But it's got US Air Force roundels, so that's interesting. Might have been one that got delivered, or perhaps a cancelled delivery, something like that. But yeah, obviously planned for the RAF, and for some reason it's got US Air Force markings as well. Then we've got one from the US Army Air Force testing program in December 1944, so not a combat aircraft. But it's done in a very striking silver camouflage, or lack of camouflage, just a bare aluminium finish, with a very eye-catching red spinner there, so that looks pretty nice. Then we've got another P-51 from the US, this time April 1944 in Anzio, Italy, so again pretty late in the war, and it's got the yellow bands and the 1943 red markings around the roundels. And finally we've got this very nice looking dark grey, ocean grey, and medium grey sort of later war RAF finish on one from Leon Solent in June 1944, and it's also got the D-Day stripes, so a pretty eye-catching scheme there as well. Yeah, I love the scheme choices in this kit, I'll have to say, and I think it's going to be really hard to pick which one I'm going to do, so I may have to do a second P-51A just to do some of the other schemes, because I think they're all really awesome. So a lot of variety, as you can see. And that's pretty much the box out of the way, so we'll open it up and have a look at the instructions now. So everything's pretty well contained. We've got our absolutely massive sheet of awesome decals there, which we'll have a look at in a sec. One single bag here containing another small bag with the canopy sprue, and then 2 sprues molded in grey plastic. And then we have our instructions somewhere in here. Here we go. And yeah, as you can see, they're slightly newer Italeri instructions, but you still have the standard introduction and history about the aircraft that we see on the box art. And this one talks a little bit about the Royal Air Force, talking about their uses for it and their designation of Mustang Mark 1 and Mark 2. So that's pretty cool. And I'm very happy because Italeri have gone with a booklet style, which I'm a big fan of for this kit, reissuing it. And on the front here, we've got both A and B sprues with a sprue map. And there's a few parts here and there that aren't going to be used because I believe this tooling was originally for both the A and the D Mustang. And then we've got this the clear sprue here. A few little keys here, but there's not too much. There's just parts not for use, drilling out holes and cutting, so it's a pretty simple kit to assemble, as you can probably tell because there's only 2 sprues. Unfortunately, the instructions here are in black and white, but as you can see on the back here, they're in color, which is good. On this page here, we've got the color guide. There are a few colors that have an Italeri code for them, but not all of them, interestingly. Otherwise, you kind of just have to go off their description of flat black or interior gray green. So yeah, pretty basic there, but you're probably better off using reference photos anyways or something like that. But they do have a single letter for each color, which you can match up in the instructions. Step 1 starts with the cockpit, which is pretty normal for an aircraft like this. You've got a instrument panel, no decals, as is pretty typical with Italeri, which is a shame. You've got to paint them, but oh well, I suppose it's not the end of the world. Looks like a basic cockpit with a seat, a joystick, and then a floor with the rudder pedals molded into them. You do have to do a bit of cutting. It looks like for the D model you'd have all of that radio equipment visible, but for the A model it's not as visible, so you have to cut that section there. Propeller assembly here, got a spinner that goes on the prop blades with a little hub, and then you've got a little washer to hold them together by the looks of things. Then you install the cockpit floor to the fuselage halves there, put the propeller in between them before you glue them, and it looks like you can spin them as long as you don't glue it to the fuselage. Then for the A model here, you've got a little bit of a floor section to replace this one, and a little bit of the radio details that go behind the pilot there, which gets glued into place, plus a rather elaborate looking tail wheel assembly there with some 2 joints to attach them to the fuselage. Turning over the page here, we've got 2 wing halves plus some optional drilling out, possibly for drop tanks or that kind of thing, maybe bombs as well. I don't know if they're included, but we'll have a little look. You then attach the wings to the fuselage halves here, plus the horizontal stabilizers. A few optional parts here, such as the antennas, depending on which version, and a few exhausts. Little part here for the air intake there for the cooling system. You've got either the 2 Hispano cannons or the I think it was either 2 or 3 50 cals, depending on which version you're doing. I believe it was more common for the British ones to have the Hispanos, but I think a few American ones did as well. But yeah, you've got the options depending on the scheme that you're doing, as you can see there. Then we've got the landing gear assembly, which is relatively simple, only 3 parts for each of the landing gear, which includes a fairing door, a wheel, and then the strut. Then we've got a set of the flaps for the inside there, which you install. Looks like a landing light there, which looks pretty interesting. 2 wheels there, plus the fairings or the doors there for the tail wheel, and then a little bit of details for the radiator here on the underbelly, such as the air intake there, and then the scoop at the back there. So yeah, looking pretty good. Oh, and we've also got a little pitot tube going into place there, and looks like some formation lights with the paint guide for them. Turning over, yeah, we've got bombs included. So you can either attach bombs or fuel tanks, depending on which aircraft you want. And then there's a little bit of a piece of text here saying, for bombs and tanks, painting and decals, see final color guide. So yeah, on this side here. But yeah, the optional drop tanks or bombs included, which is pretty nice. And that's pretty much it for the kit. So pretty simple one. A few bits of cutting here and there to change it from the A to the D model for the interior, but otherwise not too bad. And as you can see, marking guide is in color. I think it's pretty cool that they've done their color guides like this. I like the weathering and also the detail they've gone to with the colors. And yeah, it looks like a pretty easy painting guide to follow, really. Not too many small common stencils, but otherwise though, it looks pretty good. So that's the front scheme there with the different sides there. Then we've got the second scheme here from the Far East with some very interesting white stripes for, I guess, identification on the back there. And again, they've done some bits of weathering for this aircraft, quite heavy by the looks of things. And it looks like there's a few little bits of unpainted metal there on the possibly on the wings here, and also the tail there. And looks like that might be a metal spinner or possibly a grey one. But I guess you can have a look and find references of the real aircraft. But yeah, that looks pretty good. Here we've got the other. I think this one's a British one that's just happens to have American markings. Not sure the story of this aircraft, but it's interesting that they've included it. But yeah, and also I think they've done a slightly more subtle job with the weathering on the guide there, so indicating that it's obviously a bit of a newer aircraft and it wouldn't be as worn. And yeah, this is the first one I think we've got with the Hispanos, so yeah, looking pretty cool there. Turning over the page here, we have this interesting flat aluminium one, or shiny silver, I suppose. And a little bit more weathering on it by the looks of things. But yeah, no drop tanks or bombs, and it looks like the guns might be fared over possibly, or it might be just the 50 cals. A bit hard to tell. But yeah, another interesting aircraft. I wonder what its backstory is, since it's part of a testing program. We've got the last one here from the Mediterranean Theatre with the yellow identification bands, which are included as decals, although I personally prefer to paint them. And it looks like this aircraft's got a heck of a lot of different panel variations, or overspray perhaps, or different things like that. And the very interesting red roundels there, so another very interesting choice of scheme there. And I think we've got one more here, which is the British aircraft. Doesn't look like they've indicated much weathering on it either, just a little bit there, so it might have been in slightly better condition. All of the schemes in this kit are really awesome. They all are very unique and show a lot of different service history. It's going to be really hard to pick one. So I think the instructions are pretty good. They're very nice and clear, not that it's a very complicated aircraft, and the marking guides are, I think, fantastic. It's very nice that they've done them in colour. And interestingly, it's not glossy like I think the Stuka was. It's sort of in that same sort of papery, rough feel that the other Italeri instructions have had. But yeah, I think they've done a nice job revamping it to have these coloured guides. So we'll put these aside and have a look now at the plastic parts. So open that one up, and we might as well start with the sprues I have on top here with the wings, and a lot of other little bits and pieces. So as you can see, it's a pretty decent looking kit from the get-go. You got some nice recessed panel lines there, and some very nice access hatch details, and they've done a nice job making the control paddle lines a little bit more exaggerated and deep, so I think they look pretty good. Not too much flashing on the edges of the wings here, and there's no ejector pin marks or anything annoying on the upper surface. Looks like there is a little bit on the inside, but honestly, on the whole, these are pretty cleanly molded. The underside here, we've got some raised and recessed details for the interior of the landing gear bay, which, yeah, looks pretty decent. They've done a nice job here with the landing lights, or the formation lights. They've actually done recessed edges, but then they've sort of done a raised kind of bubble or bulge to them, so they look pretty nice. Nav lights also look pretty good, and again, very nice job on the recessed details on the underside there. A little bit of a raised detail here. I think it may be a hinge or some sort of point there, but yeah, pretty decent. Maybe not quite as good as the AIrfix Mustang in terms of detail, but still pretty damn good. Then we've got the horizontal stabilizers, and they've done a really nice job with the fabric texturing there, and some nice recessed panel lines. Looking pretty good on both sides. There's no flashing really or ejector pin marks. We've got the main landing gear and the tail wheel. They're looking really nicely detailed. I'm loving those hubs. They look really good. Not so much detail on the inside of these wheels here, but they look pretty good. It looks like they've done a bit of a tread pattern on the sides, but on the top there's just a rather nasty seam line that's going to need to be cleaned up, but honestly pretty good looking wheels there. Then we've got the landing gear struts, which look pretty nice and solid, and they've done a good job getting a little bit of detail onto those. The tail wheel here is a pretty solid piece there with these two large joints, so I think it'll be pretty hard to break from here. But I suspect it might be a little bit more fragile at that point, but detail on it looks really quite good. And as you can see, they've done both sides pretty nicely, although it does look like there's a bit of flash on the wheel at the back there, but honestly not too bad at all. Control column looks really good. They've done a nice job doing some raised details for the firing buttons and that sort of thing, and they've done a really nice texture for the base there of the control column. A few little details here, such as the antennas and landing gear doors. Not an awful lot of detail on them. There is a bit of raised interior detail, but nothing too fancy. A few little pylon attachment points here. Then we've got the instrument panel there, and as you can see, they've done a pretty nice job doing all the raised details. You can try and paint them by hand. It shouldn't be too difficult. I don't mind doing it personally. In fact, I think I prefer it to some decals. Although it would have been nice with these raised details if they had included some decals to stick on top of them, because that would have looked really good. But oh well, a little bit fiddly to try and paint, but yeah, not too bad looking there. They look like they've done a nice job getting most of the detail. The seat looks pretty good as well. They've done a molded set of seat belts there, which look pretty decent, I think. Obviously not as fantastic as like photo etching or maybe some decal seat belts would have been better, but they still look pretty good, I reckon, for molded plastic. A little bit of detail for the landing light there, pitot tube, which looks good. Got an antenna here, and then I think this is, it might be for the A model, I'm not too sure, or it could be for the D model, but a very nicely done armoured panel with a headrest nonetheless, although, yeah, maybe not as good as an AIrfix one, but still pretty good. Looks like we've got the main radiator air intake or scoop there, which, yeah, looks like it's pretty decent. Here we've got the fairings for the landing gear doors, and as you can see, they've done a pretty nice job doing some recessed details. However, there is some very nasty ejector pin marks on them, which will need a bit of clean up for the these flaps here, and also for the main fairings there. But yeah, otherwise not too bad. Here we have the cockpit floor, and this is the section we'll be cutting away because we won't be using it for the A model. But yeah, nothing too much for the cockpit floor, just some basic rudder pedals there. But yeah, a few guide markings there for the control column and the seat. So yeah, Sprue, I think this is Sprue B, looks pretty good. I should point out also they've numbered it, which is nice. Pretty standard for Italeri, but there are some brands I know who don't, so never underestimate how good it is to have some numbers on your sprue when you start to cut away parts and can't tell which sprue was which anymore. But yeah, looking pretty good there. We'll have a look at this other sprue here, which has the fuselage and the A model specific parts. As you can see, we've got all of our drop tanks here. Pretty basic. There's not an awful lot of detail on them. Same story with the bombs here. They have done a little bit of detail on the firing mechanisms and a few smaller details, but otherwise, yeah, relatively basic. Got the early three-bladed propeller there, looks pretty cleanly molded. There are a few little marks here and there of flashing, especially on the tips of the blades there, but nothing that can't be cleaned up. Then we've got our exhausts here for the early model Mustangs. There's a pretty nasty seam line on them that will have to get sanded back, and they haven't drilled out the holes, but they're not too bad either way. Looks like we've got an A model specific instrument panel, pretty similar to the D model that we had a look at, in terms of it being a mix of raised, well, it's pretty much all raised details, but they've sort of done a raised ring for the dials. So yeah, a little bit of dry brushing, I reckon, and it'll look pretty decent still. Looks like we've got some sort of fairing here and another piece of the floor. Got some Hispano cannons there, pretty basic, and there is a bit of a nasty seam line on them, but nothing too bad. Some, not sure what these are, some more weapons of some kind, possibly cannon barrels or something like that, but yeah, they look basic, but not too bad. We've got our A model seat with a very nicely done headrest with a bit of cushion details. Otherwise, yeah, they've done a pretty basic seat. Looks like raised seat belts again. Not as nice looking as the other seat, I reckon, but still alright. Here we've got the 250 cal fairings for the wings, if you're doing that version of the Mustang. Looks like it'll be a bit tricky to cut it away from the sprue here, and there is, not sure if that's on purpose, but there are some raised kind of bumps on the top there, but otherwise they're not too bad looking. Here we've got some earlier model Mustang wheels, and they've actually done a recessed tread pattern, which doesn't look too bad. It sort of is faded in the middle there, where there's that nasty seam line, but otherwise not too bad. We've got our spinner here, which is oddly shiny, but there's not really too much detail on it, so it was probably pretty smooth when it was molded. Base of the spinner there, a little bit of flashing on the edges, same with the actual spinner itself, but not too bad still, that can be cleaned up. Looks like some of the radio stack for the A model Mustang, which is very, very basic, just sort of a bunch of square blocks, but oh well, with a bit of painting or maybe some decals from spare stuff, that might be spruced up, but otherwise, yeah, pretty basic. A few more air intakes by the looks of things, and scoops, which are nicely done. I think it's cool that they've added these extra little pieces to give them a little bit more depth, and so that they could drill out the holes. It was probably a bit tricky to do on the the fuselage halves there with older tooling. Now we've gotten to the fuselage halves. They look pretty neat. Similar to the wings, it's all recessed panel lines. Reasonably basic, but still pretty decent. There's still a few nicely done access hatches and a bit of a grille on one side there. Plus a little bit of the interior of the cockpit there with the glare shield for the main instrument panel, which looks pretty decent. A little bit of flash on it, but that can be cleaned up. And yeah, they've done a really nice job with the fabric here. I like that quite a fair bit. And a very strong panel line for the rudders and the tail, which, yeah, it doesn't look too bad. Maybe a little bit too strong, but I'd prefer it to be stronger than not. But yeah, looking really good and very cleanly molded. Unfortunately, there's no interior detailing for the cockpit. There's no panel lines or any pedestals for the throttles or anything like that, which I think is a bit of a shame, but that's pretty typical for an Italeri kit, especially of this time. Something you could do is add some panel lines with some 1mm masking tape, which is something I like to do, or use a bit of spare sprue to make some of the extra details. So I might do that when I build this kit, but otherwise, yeah, they're pretty basic. But at least all of the ejector pin marks are pretty easy to sand away, and they're not in any particularly annoying places. You do have a little bit on, looks like just on the right fuselage half, not the left. You do have a bit of a guide here for installing the A model's parts, and pretty solid looking joints here for the tail wheel, so I reckon that's pretty good. Looks like it's a pretty tame build, not huge on the details, but still pretty decent. Finally, we've got our clear sprue here. So the clear parts aren't too good, really, to be honest. On one hand, they're very nice and transparent, and there's no scratching, and for a very curved shape, there's not an awful lot of distortion, really, unless you get pretty far away, as you can see. So, yeah, they're not really that good, though, because the canopy frames aren't molded, really. They've done a little bit, I think, on this one, and a tiny bit on the edges there, but as you can see, the canopy for the P-51A is... there's a lot of framework on it, which is completely missing from this clear part. So yeah, clear part's really not too good in this kit in terms of detail. Quality pretty decent, but yeah, unfortunately, real let down with the detail. And there's also no gun sight, which I think is a bit of a shame. Usually Italeri do a little bit better with their transparencies, and usually a gun sight's included, and it looks to me like it sticks up pretty obviously here on the P-51, but alas, no, we don't get one. So yeah, not too big a fan on these clear parts. And finally, we have our decals, which are printed by Italeri. Interestingly, their recent ME410, which I had a look at, were done by Cartograph, so they've obviously not stuck with them. Otherwise, maybe they are only doing it for a few kits, but for whatever reason, these ones are done by Italeri, but that's not too bad. I think they do a really good job anyways with their decals. Absolutely massive variety in all these markings, and there's quite a few spare ones too if you don't end up using one set for this particular kit, which is pretty awesome. I think it's always good to have spares. But they've done a really nice job, I reckon, with all the details on them. You can read a fair bit of that fine text there. And yeah, the common roundels look to be the correct colours and some pretty nice details on all of them. Pretty big tick for me personally with all of these decals included, and I reckon they'll be of good quality knowing my experience with other Italeri printed decals. So that pretty much wraps up our look at the Italeri P-51A Mustang. For what it is, which is a 1990s tooling, or late 1990s, I think it's pretty good, honestly. There's a lot of really nice details here and there, and apart from the terrible canopies and a lack of detail inside of the cockpit sidewalls, it still seems like a pretty decent kit to me. Definitely not top of the line, and you're probably better off, honestly, with the other Mustangs included in AIrfix and Academy's range. On one hand, it's a pretty old kit, so it's not going to be the best, but on the other, it is a pretty unique subject, and I think it's one that's pretty underrepresented in the modelling world. Yeah, I can't think of any other ones in 72nd scale, at least recently issued ones of the early model Mustangs, and it's a pretty important aircraft, really. So yeah, what I think I might do though is get an Academy Mustang, because I think the canopies will be the same in the early model Mustangs, and see if there's a spare one. I think the price is a bit expensive. I paid 28 AUD, that's Australian, not US, so I wasn't ripped off. That's a pretty average price for a 72nd scale warbird. I would have probably preferred it if it was around the 20-25 mark, which I think in some places it is. That seems more decent for an older kit with not an awful lot of details. But yeah, having said that though, a brilliant choice of markings, and there's so many included that I think that's really great. That's one of the strong points on this kit, definitely. Out of the box, not a hugely impressive kit, but there is a lot of promise and potential. Thank you very much for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed it and got something out of it. If you did, please be sure to leave a like, and if you have any questions or any suggestions for which scheme I should do, leave it down in the comment section below. A big shout out, as always, to my wonderful patrons for helping me fund buying these kits and the products that I use when I make them. I'm looking forward to doing this kit when I eventually get around to it, but things are a little bit busy at the moment in this month. I'm sort of just wanting to do my inbox reviews now since they're a little bit easier while I'm working on some bigger projects, including still writing the script for Mill Bay, but hopefully I'll have some updates for that pretty soon. Anyways, thanks again for making it this far, and until the next video, take care, and as always, model on.